right, I will call this Teaching and Learning Committee meeting to order on February 10th, 2025 at 5:28 p.m. Item 2, roll call, Brian Medved.
Here.
And we have Tracy Pollock absent excused, so Mike Loth will be joining us tonight.
Here.
There he is. Okay, item 3, agenda revision and approval.
Move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Brian and a second by Mike. Do we have any discussion? No? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes. Item 4, we have approval of the December 2nd, 2024 committee minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Brian, a second by Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. With that, that motion passes. We will go on to item 5, reports and updates. Item A is 24-25 winter growth data, and we have Jake Miziak joining us tonight.
All right, so the data that I'm going to share with you tonight is slightly different than a lot of the data that we've talked about during teaching and learning committee meetings. So this data is going to be our internal data that we get from the NWEA measures of academic progress tests, which is the math assessments that we give to our students in grades kindergarten through 8th grade. Kindergarten data is not represented in the data that you're going to see because kindergarten gets their first administration in winter. We kind of do that strategically, allowing kindergartners to get into school before we give them a standardized test right away. It gives them just a chance to acclimate to the school environment. So their first administration is in winter, so we get winter to spring data on our kindergartners. So they're not represented in the growth data, but I can give achievement data for kindergarten students. So every year we measure our students' fall, winter, and spring in grades K through 8, and like I said before, kindergarten is measured in winter and spring. And what I've provided for you, they're referred to by MAP as a quadrant report. So what the quadrant report will do is it breaks our student body into different categories. So the upper half of the quadrant chart, so the top 2 quadrants, that measures our growth. The far right hand quadrants, those are going to measure our achievement. So as you move from left to right on that chart, that's the number of students who are high achieving. And then as you move from the bottom to the top, that's your increase in growth. The way that this is broken out, and this is the way that MAP does it, is it's the 50th percentile and greater. Those are our students who are represented as high growth or high achievement, and then if they're below the 50th percentile, they are low growth or low achievement. So the direction that we want to move is we want to move more of our students into that upper piece that's showing and demonstrating higher growth for our students, and likewise we want to move our students to the right, as that indicates higher levels of achievement. So what I put on here for literacy is our comparison to last year from the 23-24 school year to the 24-25 school year. So represented by the top 2 quadrants, last year we had 46% of our students meet their growth targets. And this year we had 53% of our students meet their growth target in grades 1 through 5. Likewise, you can kind of take a look at the achievement levels. We've slightly raised our level of achievement, and one of the other nice things to see in the quadrant chart is one of the tougher boxes to move, and you'll notice this trend across all of the quadrant charts that you see, is that students in our low achieving students but are achieving high growth. That's one of the numbers that we want to impact the most. We want to move as many kids from that lower box to that upper box because it tends to be one of the data points that we can see we struggle with, is moving kids in that lower achieving group to the high growth. And as you'll see, what we did between 23 and 24, 24-25 is we moved more of our students who are low achieving into that the higher growth quadrant. So this data represents all students. So last year you saw quadrant charts where I broke it out for pilot versus non-pilot. So one of the other things that's in the 23-24 data is we had about 40% of our students participate in one of our literacy pilots. So this data represents kids who were being exposed to one of the curriculums, or 40% of them were being exposed to one of the resources that we were using. But even with that, you can see the growth that our students are demonstrating this year is greater than it was last year with the use of Wonders. Yep.
Yeah, I think I know the answer, but when looking over this data, I couldn't help but wonder if this testing is consistent from year to year, unlike our state data that we got.
Yep, so that's the nice thing about having an assessment like MAP within our school district is this data is all internal and it's measuring students relative to where they were last year. And the one thing this is true for all students, it's computer adaptive. So it asks the students a series of questions to hone in on their actual achievement and growth level, and the computer adapts to the performance of the student. So it gives us a pretty reliable indication of how well the students are progressing.
So I'm assuming the pilot was successful and now we've implemented it across all grades and levels.
Correct.
So the data last year showed that it was significantly improving. So now we implement it and now we have these results.
Correct.
Very good.
If you go to the next slide, that shows you when you pull out the pilot grades. So this was the data that I showed you last year. So in 23-24, the non-pilot grades in grades 1, 2, 39% of those classrooms had students who met their growth expectations. And this year in grades 1, 2, 54% of those students met their growth expectations. And then likewise last year in grades 3 and 5, we had 49%, and this year we have 52% of them meeting it. Now one of the asterisks that I said a bunch of times last year, literacy growth, because the skills take a longer term to develop, we're measuring it over a short term. So one of the nice things that we're seeing in this data is we're seeing already positive movement for kids who are jumping into a curriculum that they've never been exposed to before, and the curriculum assumes that they've had all the other grades, the resources that have come before it. So our 4th grade students, they're expected to have gone through kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade worth of Wonders to be at that 4th grade level. So that's one of the nice things is sometimes when you see a new resource being implemented, you have what's called the implementation dip as things get adjusted to that, and we're not seeing that. And in addition to this is something that our teachers they're new to and have been using it for a shorter duration of time. And as they are using it longer, they're becoming more familiar with it, the tools that are within it, and they're being, they're able to use it more effectively. So right out of the gates, they've been able to use it even when they're new to the resource, been able to implement it in an effective way with our kids. So the second one is our elementary math. So again, grades 1 through 5. And here you can see the impact that our teachers are having with our students. Again, you can see that we've moved more of our students into that were low achieving into the high growth box. Again, relative to the chart that I just showed you, that tends to be one of the boxes that's hardest for us to move. But one of the nice things that you're seeing in the data comparison from 23-24 to 24-25 is that significant increase in students who are both high achieving and high growth. Last year you can see in our data that we had a number of students who were high achieving, but there's a large proportion of them in that low growth box. Just like I was talking about for our low achieving students, for our high achieving students, we want to make sure that they're demonstrating high growth as well, that we're making sure that all the kids in the classroom are growing at the rates that we expected. Again, this is the result of the hard work that our teachers are doing with students every day. Math has also been an intentional focus of our professional development last year. We partnered with CESA 6 to provide professional development around the implementation of Bridges to kind of give a boost, because Bridges has been implemented in our district for a while. It has been a successful resource that we've used. We've seen good results both on the state report card and our internal data around how well Bridges is performing with our students. But it was one of those things where we were kind of tying up some loose ends with Bridges and making sure that it was being utilized to its fullest capacity in classrooms. One of the other things that we did with CESA 6 is we provided targeted coaching to each one of the buildings so that teachers could ask specific questions relative to Bridges and its implementation in classrooms, and they were able to get support from our consultant.
I apologize, because this just came into my head, so I haven't, so if you need time, kind of to research it. But I guess I would also be curious, I don't know how far back we have these quadrant charts, to see if we were trending this way, or, prior years, just to see, is it really, were we trending? Because it could be the kids just are really good at math, and so now we're having kids that are really strong in these moving through, so we're kind of moving these guys, or are we really our new curriculum, which obviously has made a big difference, but it's just interesting to see over a longer period, just more than just 1 year.
Yeah, so the longevity of our MAP data, it's not extensive. So when I joined the district 2 years ago, that's when we first, in the springtime, administered K2. Prior to that, we didn't administer MAP to our youngest grade levels. So that data we don't have it. And then from 3-5, we do have some data, but if you look at the total number of students who were tested in those grade years, it doesn't necessarily always represent our total student body. So there was, and again, I'm making assumptions because I wasn't here. There was inconsistent administration for those 3 windows. It looks like we did a pretty good job of capturing the whole student body in fall, but then in the winter and spring, we did more selective testing in terms of the number of kids who were tested using MAP. So the more consistent data shows up about 2 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, because that is an impressive jump from 24 to 25.
But to your point, one of the things to notice is the upper part of this, that registers growth. So that's relative to students regardless of their math ability. So if we've got a high achieving student, we're still looking for that student to grow and to meet their growth targets. So that levels the playing field regardless of how good you are at math. So any movement in the upper half of those charts demonstrates high level of growth.
So it measures them achieving the high bar and continue to push that bar higher, right?
Correct. So if you have a student in the 99th percentile in math, they have a growth expectation that's associated with them. So we could have a student who is in the 99th percentile, their math, they don't meet their expectations, and they would show up in that lower right-hand box.
Is it realistic to get very low single digits, or expect low single digits in the lower left and push everyone up and to the right?
Yes, I think, when you think about that, the lower left-hand box, so the low growth, low achievement, for any of our students, we can expect them to meet their growth expectation. So the goal would be to get that number as small as possible. So you might get a classroom of students and you would see so one of the things that MAP is, it's a standard distribution. So a standard distribution is, bell curve is going to come to me eventually. So anytime you have a large sample, because this is our entire school district and 1,000 kids, or at the elementary level, that's going to be one of those things that it's going to be hard to shift the bell curve significantly, that you're going to get those numbers to be 0 in terms of the achievement part. On the growth side of things, that's one of those things that you can continually push at to make sure you get as many students growing at the rate that you would anticipate. MAP does set a bell curve around growth as well, so that it's trying to give it a standard distribution. So when you think about the growth target that they set for students, it's variable depending on what their achievement level is. So that's another thing that's a constant. So anytime we see our numbers north of 50%, we're moving in the right direction. But to your point, we want to push that number as far away from 50 as we can, because that's a good indication that we're making solid moves in terms of supporting our students.
Thank you.
This is impressive growth from the numbers that we're looking at here. But I think the bar was pretty low. I think the 2023-24, we started at a pretty low, I would say disappointing point to begin at. Do we attribute any of that to COVID learning loss? Or we looked into that, have we thought about that? Is that possibly where we got those low numbers from?
With the 23-24 data, one of the things to notice is we still have 70% of our kids in the higher achievement spot. So their achievement level is still pretty high, but they weren't achieving the level of growth that we were looking for. The national data around learning loss associated with COVID has been consistent that kids who experienced those learning conditions did experience learning loss. So that could be factored into the
I just
data.
look at, I mean, 70% is good. I mean, not great, but good. But the 25% not growth and not achieving is concerning to me. 25% of our students, that's a big number, you know? But dropping that to 14 and seeing the growth improve, that's, I like what I see, but I just feel like something happened there.
Yeah, I think you contribute to a lot of things, right? And a lot of what Jake was explaining. So I think there's, for sure, we're gonna have some measurement of the COVID effect. I hate using that as a crutch.
Well, I guess I
to
would love to
explain
see
low
these
numbers.
numbers continued. Like, I want to see the spring
Yeah,
numbers.
I think-
want to see the
I think-
fall numbers. The winter. Did we pick winter because that was the best looking numbers?
No, this is the latest administration of it. So this measures from fall to winter.
Okay.
So likewise with last year's data, we had, and it was more prevalent with the reading pilot where we had the fall, winter, spring data in terms of our literacy performance. This was actually in the assessment report from last year. So the larger presentation to the board last year included all of our math data. I think the way in which it was presented last year at the board level didn't provide us the opportunity to have that little bit deeper discussion. And with the implementation of Wonders this year, I wanted to make sure we were able to highlight what was moving in terms of those numbers.
I've never been a huge proponent of math testing or any kind of standardized testing, but if we can get these kind of numbers and we can see our relative growth and the growth of each student individually and be able to map it this way, this makes a lot more sense to me. And I think we do need, because we did not do math testing on all the students in the past.
Correct.
But if we can get an overall picture of the health of the district this way, by doing it 3 times a year, I think this gives us much better information than any state testing will ever give us. And this is usable data.
And that's the last piece of this is, so I'm showing you all of the kids pooled together. So classroom teachers can get exactly this same chart for their classroom to see how well each of their students are moving. So that would cause them to ask different questions about what they can do instructionally. So it can be something that that teachers use to impact instruction. Because if you notice that there's a student who's demonstrating high achievement but they're not growing, that tells you something that you can do instructionally to impact that student.
So
think-
a teacher report, if we look at a quadrant report from a teacher's lens, there's a scatter plot of dots across this quadrant. And you hover that dot and you can see where they fall and who that specific student
Yeah,
is.
that's what I'm saying. This
And then
data is
correlate that
helpful.
to classroom practice. So
So
this
you can,
I
as a
think-
teacher, I can take it down to the student level
Correct.
and say, this is the group of students I need to work with.
Yep.
Maybe I do a focus group with them.
Yep. And then you can break that down into specific strands of math and literacy.
Yeah,
Can you
again,
take,
that's what
can
I
you
said,
take
this
this
is
back
useful data.
to English?
I think part of this though too is that the
So-
benefit now is we have, all of our students are using the same curriculum across the board. So we have consistency, so now we are comparing the
Yeah,
same.
so I want to talk about one thing quick. So here we have a new curriculum brought in. It was implemented via pilot for a year. And so we have that growth from the pilot year to the implementation year. as well as the growth for professional development of our staff and the support of our staff to implement it successfully. So we're seeing this 39 to 43. I'm just going to look at that upper right, because that's we love everyone to be in that box, right? So if we go over to math, and we're going from 27 to 56 on a math curriculum that we've had in this district, and the biggest change we made was support for our staff and professional development, and having that developing staff or that developmental support for them to implement it at its peak. That's the number that is most interesting to me. And if you take those variables, that is, I would say you can remove the thought of COVID effect and say we're achieving that because of the deliberate work of his staff and the support of our entirety of our staff and the vertical and cross-district alignment work that we're doing to get these kids the best educational experience in the classroom. That's what I see when I see this number, and I just want to say thank you for that work, because that's not an easy thing to do. We're pushing a lot of staff to expand their capabilities because we know they're good staff, and we're giving them that support to be the best they can for our students. And I think we're seeing the dividends pay off in 1 year, 2 years of that work. That Titanic ship that we're trying to turn around is starting to head in that right direction. So I just want to say thank you for that. There's all sorts of variables we can put in here. COVID for sure. And the further we get away from it, the less we need to discuss it, because we know we're doing the right work within these buildings to get these kids where they need to be.
Oh, and I agree. If we can continue the growth, I'm all for it. We're definitely doing the right thing, seeing the improvement that we got. Those are big numbers. You know, that's a big improvement. There's no doubt about it.
I think the forethought of bringing in MAP testing to get us a norm that we can trust to really sink our teeth into. We knew what was going on with the state report cards, and it's probably going to continue into the future, depending on who sits where in what office. That could change here and there. There's state legislation around it already that's being talked about already. And we're part of that conversation. We were part of it the other day, and I really appreciate the work you guys were able to bring to that room and that conversation, because I think that helps that at the state level. But we'll continue doing this, right? That's the goal. The MAP testing gets us the data we need. Specifically, I think it's, Brian, to your point, all the students, we have to have that data on. Standardized testing, there's pluses and minuses too. We can agree on those things all day, but as long as we can normalize it and then utilize it going forward from year to year, I think helps us know we're headed in the right direction, or continue to head in the right direction.
Mike?
There's your stuff.
As long as we were on math,
Yeah.
are we still on math?
Oh, we're good.
The board, when Common Core was brought out, this board voted it down. We might have been the only board in the state that voted down Common Core. I don't know that it's in policy, so it might not be well known. This board voted down Common Core. What happened is I think we used our original textbooks for as long as we could. We never developed our own curriculum, because that's a horrendous project. That's a whole company unto itself, I believe. So that didn't happen. But what I've been suspicious of is Common Core sneaking its way into textbooks where maybe it once wasn't. So the question for you is today's math in this district, do we have any Common Core in our math?
There's a high degree of similarity between the Wisconsin state standards and the Common Core math standards. So there is a degree of similarity between the standards or the learning expectations. If you look at things like what we expect from our elementary students and middle and high, take Algebra 1 for an example. Algebra 1 is, in terms of its learning expectations, I would say That's one of those consistent things that we've had for a long period of time where the state standards have been able to refine what we're looking for in terms of student outcomes, and that's the same thing that happened. What you'll see in the Kennedy outcomes where I think there's been a refinement in terms of what we're anticipating in terms of student expectations, so where we want them to be by the time that they leave 8th grade.
So if I were to look at, you know, my understanding is that the way I did multiplication when I was in K through 12, you know, when we finally got that far, if I look at one of our books, am I going to be irritated because there's some weird common mode core way of doing it? I haven't looked at any books myself, but, you know, I see things, hear things, and some of it is kind of upsetting to me.
I can bring some samples of the way in which multiplication is taught to our students so that you can see that. I would tell you one of the moves that's happened within Bridges, the resource that we use with our students, and sometimes this is where the new math comes into play. Everybody in the room probably learned a standard algorithm when they were learning how to do math in terms of multiplication and division, and this is the way that you do it. One of the additional things that you're going to see in addition to learning a standard algorithm is we try to support students' understanding of place value, so that once they generate a number, and they have some sense of how big that number is. So there are some components that you'll see within Bridges where, and this is just one example, there's a few different things I could bring up. But one of the emphases that you'll see is that the understanding of place value, so that kids understand how big a number is once they're able to go through the process of generating a number.
Okay. I wouldn't mind taking a look at a book or two if you can bring them in.
Surely.
For sure, and that curriculum resource outdates this administration being here. That was board approved many years ago, and to Mr. Eward's point, aligned expectations and professional development of that resource, though it was in place, have allowed our teachers to have bigger capacity to work with all learners to build upon that improvement in data, which is aligned to the Wisconsin state standards, which this board approved.
Okay.
Kennedy, Jake?
Kennedy. Kennedy is, for literacy, is also piloting a new resource, or not piloting, they're implementing, sorry. So they have StudySync. So last year, again, you can see the number of students who were meeting their growth expectations. Last year we were at 36%, and this year we're at 53% of our students who are meeting growth expectations, and then similarly, you can see that we have more students who are reaching the high achievement end of the quadrant chart as well. Again, this is the first year of implementation for them, so everything that I reiterated with Wonders. Again, with the 23-24 data, there was some pilot data there. If you remember Kennedy, we ran the pilot slightly different, where they were using both of the resources, so they used a resource from HMH, and they used the product that we went with, which was StudySync. In those classrooms, they did not implement it as long as they did when we had our elementary classrooms. Our elementary classrooms piloted it for the entire year, whereas if you remember, our pilots for the middle school were slightly on a delayed track, so they didn't start the year with the resources, but we picked it up as the year progressed. So you can see how the implementation of StudySync is going at the middle school. Again, we're seeing positive results in terms of the number of students who are meeting their growth expectations. And lastly, this is Kennedy Math. So Kennedy Math has a new resource. This is the second full year of implementation for them. So you can see the number of students who are meeting growth expectations there. Kennedy in the math department has also been a target of the professional development that we've partnered with CESA 6 around. Again, I'm going to give a lot of credit to the math teachers at Kennedy. This was something that we had talked about at the board level and in the committees, that some of the different strategies that they're using to support all students in the classroom, in terms of making sure that they're able to see the progress of students while they're working, and making sure that they can intervene when students need some additional support. So a lot of the work that you'll see at Kennedy is derived from a lot of the professional development that the teachers were interested in engaging with, and you can see the impact on the classroom and the students. Questions on any of the four charts?
I would assume most of the discussion would be pretty reflective of the elementary schools to the middle school, as far as those numbers and what we're seeing play out. To the discussion we all just had. A lot
Yes.
of those, it all correlates in the same fashion.
Absolutely. I mean,
Improved.
Right, we saw in all four of those areas, we saw some improvements that we were looking for. Again, in terms of implementation, I think, Mr. Ewart, you brought it up when we were talking about the professional development end of it. From the curriculum side of things, one of the things that we want to make sure that every classroom is a viable curriculum. And we have that in the four areas that we've highlighted there. So every one of those classrooms has a consistent resource that they're using. But in addition to that, where you really see the capacity to impact kids is through the strategies that teachers are using with kids, and that comes through professional development and the work that our teachers are doing. So as these programs mature, the anticipation is that we continue to see the high levels of growth that we're starting to see. Again, these are early implementations of these resources. So it's nice to see that there's evidence that they're having an impact on kids.
So we'll be able to see another set of data then in spring, right?
Yep.
See how it continues to
That'll be an
improve.
interesting to see where they jump from this winter test to the spring test.
Typically, at that point, we show fall to spring growth, so then you can see the impact of the full year versus that. But I'm sure I can find a way to demonstrate the full year's worth of data for you too. The quadrant chart, typically the way that I can derive it is the quadrants that you just saw there, but I do from fall to spring.
Sure.
Anything else? No? All right, thank you, Jake. All right, we will go on to item 6, unfinished business. There is none. We will move on to new business. A, we have Snap-on PMI certification. Back to you, Jake.
All right, so during the next school year, so the 25-26 school year, we would like to add an industry-recognized credential from Snap-on. It's the precision measuring credential that students can earn. So the resources provided through Snap-on Precision Measuring Instruments, so PMI kits, equip students with the skills to use advanced measuring instruments and enhance students' employability and readiness for technical fields. The industry-recognized credential that students can earn is currently partly reimbursable through the CTE incentive grants that we can apply for on an annual basis. So students who earn a certification similar to the Snap-on PMI certification, we can submit them after they graduate. So for the graduating class, they can earn it at any point during the 4 years that they're at GHS, but in their senior year, we're able to submit the certifications that they've completed. For each student, if they complete multiple certifications, we can only submit one of them for the grant, but we can receive up to $1,000 per pupil for students who complete these certifications. Typically, we don't get reimbursed at the $1,000 rate because it's prorated based on the number of students who earn certifications that year. Typically, the last 2 years, we've been somewhere in the neighborhood of $700 per pupil in terms of the reimbursement that we've gotten. So what we would like to add is the precision measuring certification, this would come through two of our multiple classes at the high school through two of our instructors. So Jacob Larrabee and Scott Munsmeyer have agreed, if we proceed with this, to be trained for being able to deliver the curriculum that's associated with the Snap-on precision measuring, and this would impact 4 of our tech ed classes. The kits that we have to purchase are what's outlined in the quote that's been provided. What we're asking for is $39,069.22. All the purchases that come through this is a one-time purchase. So, for example, we've got about 45 students this year who are registered for the classes that could potentially deliver this curriculum, and for us it's a one-time purchase.
Are there any consumables for something like this?
No, so all the things that we need are one-time purchases, so they're not something that we have to buy on an annual basis.
Great.
Does this number include the training for the teachers as well?
This doesn't include the training, because the training is being paid for through one of our Title grants. So Title II allows us to pay for the professional development, and so that's being paid for separately.
I am not familiar with this program, PMI. I'm assuming it's manufacturing, but what industries would use that certification?
According to Snap-on, auto collision repair and refinishing, carpentry, industrial maintenance, millwright, machine tool operation, nuclear technology, transportation technology, energy production, and distribution are all the areas
Strengths.
that they say that this would be applicable to.
Okay.
They go on to say it could be used in fields from manufacturing, metalworking, aerospace, transportation, and energy.
Okay.
It's a few,
Good to know.
huh? Mike?
The Snap-on referenced here is Snap-on tool, I believe?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. Yeah, as far as precision measuring goes, what I'm familiar with is talking to a mechanical engineer once that was in the ball bearing industry. He said that making ball bearings wasn't really a problem, but the big challenge was measuring them. You had the better your measurement capability was, the better the ball bearing you could produce. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It was the measurement deal that determined quality of the bearings that this company produced. So I didn't know there was anything like this, so I was real happy to see it when reading the material. You know, anything.
Perfect day for you to join us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so
And it's a huge benefit to our kids too, because this is something that they can put on their resume, and
Yeah.
you know, it's
Straight to workforce.
Mhm.
you know, engineers need accurate data, and if the data's not accurate, all you can do is throw it out. You know, it's useless. So
It's the same in education.
well, with the state testing, I let it go, but
Yep.
it applies to
Yep.
state data also.
Yep.
If it's
Yeah,
junk, it's
as a
junk.
carpenter, I get to maybe 1/64 of an inch, but when you're talking micro, you're talking, my grandfather was a tool and die, and you're talking thousandths of an inch. You know,
Mhm.
it's a big difference.
Yeah, even 10,000ths
Yeah.
for good tools. I try to hold 1 or 2 thousandths when I'm machining, but I'm using worn out equipment also, so I think 1 or 2 thousandths is pretty good.
I think anytime we can grow our tech ed, you know, and continually add to it, and that benefits our students in the long run, and it looks like, you know, also it will eventually pay for itself anyway with the, you know, getting the grants back, so I think it's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you. It was a good Sunday. Reading this kind of stuff in TNL. So you are the man.
Well, with that, I think I can take a motion.
I'll make a motion with a positive recommendation to the Finance Committee to approve the purchase of a Snap-on Precision Measuring Instruments Kit for the amount not to exceed $39,069.22.
Second?
All right, I have a motion by Brian and a second by Mike. Any other discussion on
Do you think it'll make it through the finance committee?
I know somebody
I don't know.
that might push her through pretty good.
We'll
see.
I have no objections
Up
at
in
this
the air.
time.
We're gonna have to look at it real closely, I think.
Alright. Okay, so with that, no new discussion, I will take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Alright, we'll move on to the summer school offerings and proposed budget, item B. Jake.
So every year about this time, we start thinking about summer, when it's nice and warm outside. What I provided for you in the packet is the summer school course offerings as well as the summer school overview. Every course that we ran last year is a course that we're anticipating running again this year. Last year we added 3 new courses at this time, and all 3 of those courses ran and they had really nice enrollment, so we anticipate running them again. There's only one adjustment to the courses that are offered. This was something that we had done in the past, but was not a part of the slate of summer school course offerings last year. So there's a Porcupine Mountain backpacking trip that is taken. We have a series of 3 instructors who work with some students. There's a kind of a pre-course that they do around backpacking skills, and then they go to the Porcupine Mountain Wilderness State Park in Michigan to actually go backpacking. So they had done this trip for many years. They didn't do it last year, and it's being offered as part of our summer school offering this year. That's why the motion includes an additional approval for overnight travel for them, so that this can be taken care of all together, so that if we approve that part of the course recommendation, we would also be approving overnight travel that they would be engaged in. The other thing that's included in this report is just kind of a summary of the overview of what we're going to do. Very similar to last year, we're going to run the same sessions that we did before, where there are 2 sessions that kind of surround the 4th of July weekend or week. So there's two weeks worth of sessions prior to the 4th of July, and then following the 4th of July week, there are 2 more sessions or 2 more weeks of summer school. Any class that's not really a part of that 4-week slate of classes I've outlined in the select classes, and that would include the transition to middle school, freshman PE that we offer for credit, swimming, which is done through Rocket Aquatics, Camp Acapella, KMS band program, and the Wall of Sound. All of those are not a part of the 4-week summer school. They have select offerings, but we'll run them for the identical amount of time that we did last year. And there's an estimated budget that's been provided for you. This, again, is using similar numbers to what we had last year in terms of what we were doing for an estimated salary and budget, as well as estimated materials. Again, very similar to what it was last year, where there's not a significant increase. There's a slight increase in the salary and benefits, mainly because of the additional instructors that we're adding for the Porcupine Mountain trip.
How many students are going to Porcupine Mountain?
There's typically 12 students who go on that trip. Part of that is based on the
Ratio
of adults to kids and the kind of activity that
of
they're
campsite
doing.
availability, those
Oh,
type of
sure.
things, yeah.
I get that.
That trip, in addition to backpacking, there's 3 science instructors who lead it, so they make course connections to different fields of science, including astronomy and biology and geology while they're there.
Sounds like a fun course.
Great opportunity.
Is there an age opportunity or an age limit on that?
We
That's
can't
no-
claim non-students
Yeah.
for the summer school. So.
If you graduate from high school, you're not eligible.
Never heard
so-
to ask. Try. So.
Which is an important, so as Dr. Reuter mentioned, that is one important
Thank
point
you.
for this, is that our seniors would not be eligible to
Okay.
do it because they're at that point
I'm glad they brought it back. It sounds like an amazing.
Yeah,
trip.
they've done it for a number of years.
So we'd have to do like a lottery if you have more than 12 students that want to do that? How do
So
we?
same thing, as we run all of our summer school courses, it's a first come, first serve. There is, in terms of the instructors, they do kind of create a clear picture for our students who are signing up for it, what they're signing up for, because they are backpacking and
Camping and, yeah.
camping, and it's a lot of exercise for students, so they have to be aware of what they're signing up for.
Right. So is this list, it's similar, it's the same as last year, pretty much
It's
we're just adding?
identical to
it's
last year, the
identical.
only thing that's different is the Porcupine Mountain.
How often do we look at this and either drop a course or add a course?
Every year. So in terms of adding new courses, a lot of that's driven based on student interest, so and our ability to get teachers to teach those classes. In my time that I've been here, every course that's been proposed by our teachers, we've then tried to run it, and then I should make a couple exceptions. If there are very similar courses being proposed in the same year, we've kind of combined them to just, last year we had multiple art courses that were very, very similar. So we ran it as one. But any of the courses that our teachers propose, we again, try to get those approved by the board, and then we try to run them, and it's all based on student enrollment. So for the full slate of courses that we're offering, if there are classes that are not interesting to our students and they don't sign up for it, we don't run those classes. So there are minimum numbers that we apply to all of our classes to make sure that we're not running classes that essentially we don't break even on.
Right. Well, and that can shift year to year depending on
Correct.
Students.
Last year, one of the real nice things that happened last year, and we did some adjustments to the scheduling of classes to make sure we had multiple offerings for grade levels at each of the 3 session slots that we run per day. We did not drop, I don't think, we may have had sections that we were dropping, but we didn't drop classes last year. So we were able to run all the classes that we were looking for.
Mike?
I just wanted to ask, I always like looking the list over, wanted to ask if you could elaborate on a couple of the classes. You'll see
I will try.
You'll see a pattern here. The first one is, can you say anything about what students might do in engineering adventures?
Yeah, they, depending on grade level, they have different tasks that, or engineering challenges that they're exposed to. So, some of the common ones, like a marble run type of engineering, where they want the marble to travel as slow as possible or as fast as possible given series of constraints. They'll also build similar Rube Goldberg type devices and things like that, because we have multiple grade levels, so it's some of our younger learners, their first experiences into the trial and error of engineering.
Oh yeah, that's good. And then, let's see, another one here. I think, how about Lego robotics?
Yeah. So Lego they have different kits that they have available to students. So they're able to, similar to the Legos that we've all experienced, with a few different parts in there that they can automate what they're building to do different things. So they're working with some of those pre-established Lego kits to build and then automate the contraptions that they're building.
Is there any chance, like on Lego robotics, it wouldn't be a punishment for the students, but could they come and demonstrate if they were willing, at a board meeting?
Definitely. I think that's one of the things that we could potentially look for in terms of a board update, or I can
during
solicit some pictures and videos of what our
yes,
students
Oh,
are
yeah,
doing.
maybe in the summer as
maybe
one
that
of
would
our
work. Yeah.
reports, some mid-year or midsummer update. Yeah, some
Yeah.
video or something.
I mentioned it's not a punishment because
Yeah.
some students, including me when I was their age, would have said, why would I want to do that? But, I think it could be fun. You could tell them there's a crazy guy on the board that likes to see all this stuff. And then The next one, science extravaganza.
Similarly, with Science Extravaganza, they take a look at some, a wide range of interesting science topics that kids would be interested in, but then in addition to that, they, I don't want to call them standard experiments, but they run a lot of kitchen chemistry type
Oh,
experiments. So again, with our board meetings in the summertime, that might be another one where we can get you some pictures
Oh, yeah.
as well as videos to show you what they're working on.
yeah, it'd be nice. I think, and to go off topic a little bit, swimming lessons, here's one that's really good for lifelong knowledge, right? I don't think we should have a single student that graduates that doesn't know how to swim. So,
And that's with our partnership with Rocket Aquatics. They provide those lessons in the summer.
okay, very good. Okay, thank you.
Looks like some fun classes.
Oh,
Up
yeah.
early. Okay. Any other questions, comments on the list? No? Good, all right. Then I can take a motion.
I will make a motion to recommend to the full board to approve the summer school courses and proposed budget for 2025. Additionally, provide approval for the overnight travel for students and advisors to travel to Porcupine Mountain Wilderness State Park in Ontonagon, Michigan from June 14th to the 18th, 2025.
I will second that.
Yeah, I have a motion by Brian, a second by Mike. Any other discussion? No? Thank you, Jake, for kind of going through some of those classes. With that, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. With that, it passes. All right, we've come to item 7. Anybody have a motion?
We adjourn.
8. Item
8. Sorry. Thanks, Mike.
Second.
Second.
I'll second item 8.
Okay. All right, I have a motion by Brian, a second by Mike. Any discussion? All right, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes. We are adjourned at 6:20 PM. Thank you.